Before compost bins, tumblers, and plastic lids entered our gardens, farmers were already growing deep, fertile soil that fed generations. They didn't call it soil science or no-dig gardening, they simply worked with what they had, observed nature closely, and built soil in layers, slowly, intentionally, and with remarkable results. If you've ever wondered how old farms stayed productive without bottled fertilizers or modern compost systems, this is the missing piece. Layering organic materials directly on the land wasn't just a technique, it was a way of thinking about soil as a living system. And the good news is it still works today, whether you're gardening in a backyard, raised bed, or small farm. Soil was never meant to be bare. Traditional farmers understood something many modern gardeners are just rediscovering. Bare soil is unhealthy soil. In forests, meadows, and old fields, the ground is always covered by leaves, grass, stems, or decaying plant matter. That natural layering feeds soil organisms, protects moisture, and builds structure over time. Instead of removing organic debris, early farmers added to it. Crop residues stayed on the field, weeds were cut and dropped, manure was layered with straw, kitchen scraps were buried or spread thinly. Over time, these layers broke down where they lay, feeding the soil directly, rather than being processed elsewhere. This approach didn't require turning piles or waiting months for finished compost. The soil itself did the work. So, here's the logic behind layered soil building. Layering works because soil life actually works in layers. Fungi dominate near the surface, breaking down woody and fibrous material. Bacteria thrive just a bit deeper, digesting softer plant matter. Worms and insects move between layers, mixing nutrients gently without destroying soil structure. When farmers layered materials instead of mixing everything together, they created a steady, slow-release food system. Carbon-rich materials like straw, leaves, or stalks were balanced by nitrogen-rich inputs such as manure, green plants, or food scraps. Rain, time, and soil organisms did the rest. This wasn't about speed, it was about resilience. Fields built this way held moisture longer, resisted erosion, and produced crops even in dry or difficult seasons. On old farms, soil building often happened right where crops were grown. After harvest, stalks and leaves were chopped and left in place. Livestock bedding, manure mixed with straw, was spread on top. In some regions, seaweed, ash, or forest litter was added as another layer. In gardens, layers were built directly into beds. A rough base of twigs or corn stalks might go down first. On top of that came weeds, kitchen scraps, manure, and finally a protective cover of straw or leaves. Each layer served a purpose: structure, nutrition, moisture retention, and protection. Over time, the beds settled, sank, and just transformed into dark, crumbly soil. No bin required. So, why did this method outperform compost bins? Compost bins are useful, sure, but they separate organic matter from the soil ecosystem. Traditional layering kept nutrients right where plants could access them immediately. Roots grew down into decomposing layers, tapping into moisture and minerals long before the material fully broke down. Layering also reduced labor. There was no turning, hauling, or managing multiple systems. Everything just stayed in one place. If something grew, it fed the soil. If something died, it fed the soil. Nothing was wasted. Most importantly, layering supported fungal networks. Turning compost too often favors bacteria, but disrupts fungi. Layered soil building allowed fungi to thrive, creating healthier soil structure and better nutrient exchange for plants. How you can use layering in a modern garden. You don't need a farm or livestock to use this method. Start with what you already have. In an empty bed, begin with rough organic matter like small branches, dried stalks, or cardboard. This creates airflow and slow decomposition at the base. Add a layer of green material, fresh weeds, grass clippings, or vegetable scraps. Follow that with something dry like leaves or straw. If you have compost or manure, spread it thinly as another layer. Finish with mulch to protect everything underneath. Then plant directly into the top. The soil below will improve with every season. Even in an existing garden, layering works. Instead of pulling plants out by the roots, cut them at soil level and leave the roots to decay in place. Add organic matter on top and let the soil rebuild itself. One of the biggest lessons from old farmers is patience. Layered soil building doesn't produce instant results, but it creates long-term fertility. Each season adds depth, life, and resilience. Another lesson is observation. Farmers adjusted layers based on what the land needed. Sandy soils got more organic matter, wet soils got coarser materials. Nothing was rigid. Soil was treated as a partner, not a problem to fix. Finally, they trusted biology over chemistry. Instead of forcing growth with inputs, they fed the system that fed the plants. Modern soils are often depleted, compacted, and stripped of organic matter. Layering is one of the simplest ways to reverse that trend without expensive inputs or complex systems. It works for beginners because, well, it's forgiving. It works for experienced gardeners because it builds real soil, not just temporary fertility. And it works everywhere, from small urban gardens to rural homesteads. This is not a trend, it's a return. Bringing it back to Soilpower. At Soilpower, the goal isn't just growing plants, it's rebuilding the living foundation beneath them. Layered soil building connects us to generations of farmers who understood that healthy soil is built, not bought. If this article helped you see soil differently, imagine what consistent, simple practices can do in your own garden over time. If you want more deep practical soil wisdom rooted in real experience, subscribe to Soilpower, share this article with a fellow gardener, and keep building soil the way nature intended, one layer at a time.